Evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You. Just looking down at the clock. Over 450 of you watching live, and warm welcome to you if you are here watching us live, delivering this final warm-up for Paper 2, which we know is only tomorrow. A big welcome to you, and big welcome to anybody who's also watching it on catch-up. I'm joined tonight by Lara in the middle of the screen and Anne on the right-hand side. Good evening, both.
Hello. Evening, everyone.
Lara, do you want to give us a quick rundown of what we're going to go through tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing a paper 2. It's called Nailing the Question on Advanced Information for your exam tomorrow. I can see there are a lot of questions already coming up in the chat box, and what I'm going to suggest is that we're going to do the session today. We're going to do the activities as we normally do, Anne and I, and I'm going to try and leave 10 minutes at the end for you to ask questions. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is that if you know you have a question you want answered, I'm not promising we can answer everything because obviously we are on a time limit here tonight, but if you've got a question you want to ask that's maybe off topic or not to do with what we're actually going through today, or just something totally separate to do with paper 2, can you maybe try and wait till the end? Because obviously there are going to be so many comments going through, you might lose your question. So maybe try and wait till the end of the session, the last 10 minutes, and you can type your question in, and we'll try and answer as many as we can just in the tail end of the session today. So the session that we're going to be doing today, the paper 2 question focus, I'm going to be starting off, and we're going to be looking at research methods, command words to begin with. We're going to be looking at question highlights and research methods and common errors that are made, and we're also going to look at how to nail evaluation from approaches. Obviously, we had our exam clinic last night, and there are a lot of questions coming up here that were answered last night. I know Tutor 2 in the chat box has actually pasted some links for you for Sperry's research. I know there have been quite a few questions on that. So please click on that link and have a little look. But otherwise, I think we'll get started. We've got some games and activities tonight.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, as always, we really encourage you to put your answers in the chat box for us. And, you know, it is meant to be an interactive session. So here we go. All right, so as we said, this is the content of this evening. We're going to kick start with a game, which is called 3, 2, 1. Some of you may be familiar with this. So you're going to have 2 minutes to answer these questions. So let's have a look at what the questions are. So I would like from you 3 assumptions of the behaviourist approach. I want 2 ways of assessing validity, and then I want 1 brain scan that has good temporal resolution. So you've got 2 minutes, guys. If you can put all of your answers together as opposed to doing it separately, and then once you've got your answers, press enter and put it in the chat box. So we're getting a lot of answers for for number 1 and 3. But what about has anybody answered number 2 yet? What are we thinking for 2? How can we assess validity? Yeah, really good, Ryan. Perfect. Getting some really good answers for the assumptions of the behaviourist approach. Aisha, really good answer as well for 3. Really good. Funny. Neville, is that? Face and concurrent. Yes, for number 2. Perfect. All right, so let's actually have a look. Let's go through our answers then. So our 3 assumptions, let's start with that. We've got born as blank slates. I saw that come up quite a bit, especially tabula rasa. So really good and well done for those of you that remembered that. The focus is on observable behaviour, and we learn from our environment. A lot of you kind of got those suggestions and just reading some of the others. Yeah, behaviours acquired through learning. Good. Yeah, determined by the environment. Yeah, really, really good answers for that one. Obviously, that's not a comprehensive list of all the assumptions, but they're kind of, if you like, the main standout ones, if you like, for behavioural. Let's have a look at 2 then. So this is ways of assessing validity. So can anybody explain any of these 2, what concurrent or face validity is? So some of you have already put this down as an answer, but can you explain to me the difference or what they are? Can you explain them to me? So I'd say one's a lot more objective than the other. Do we know which one that might be? Which one's more objective than the other in terms of assessing validity? Yeah, Kieran, well done. Face validity is when something is visually valid. Yeah. If the study looks like it measures what it's supposed to, well done. I think that was Lily. That's gone past so quick. Let's see one on concurrent. Yeah, so we're getting the idea that it's a comparison. And Malaki, I think it is, previously established measurement at the same construct. Yeah, so I'm going to give you an example here. Let's say your teacher made up a mathematical test when you started the course, and they wanted to see what you got in the mathematical test. To maybe see if that test was valid in terms of measuring mathematical ability, they might compare it with your GCSE maths score that you've just done, because your GCSE maths arguably is an accepted method and valid way of assessing your mathematical ability. So you're basically comparing it with an already established test that measures the same thing. Face validity, as rightly a lot of you have said, is very subjective, because usually it's the researcher kind of looking, for example, at a questionnaire, and they might look at the questionnaire and say, right, does this measure what it's intended to measure? Oh, yes, it does, or oh, no, it doesn't. So it tends to be a bit more subjective than concurrent, tends to be a bit more objective. So really well done for a lot of you that recognise that face validity tends to be a bit more subjective in that matter. So really good. All right, so here it was EEG. So well done of you that said EEG for our temporal resolution. Can anybody tell me what that means? What is temporal resolution? What does temporal resolution mean? Yeah, so some of you are saying the time gap, yep, moment to moment activity. Yeah, really, really good answers here. So, yeah, it does refer to how often the technique or the scanning technique takes readings. And with EEG, we know it takes readings every millisecond. So it does record the brain activity in real time. Okay, whereas fMRI has a bit more of a delay. I think it's about a 4-second delay, if I'm right in saying. So, yeah, really good. Samuel, yep, we hear you. Yeah, it is in real time. Perfect. Well done, guys. Well done. So, what we're just going to have a little reminder of now, because I know some of you have been asking questions about the advanced information about, oh, can they ask comparison and is this in the spec? So we're actually just going to go just have a little reminder. I know a lot of you have probably looked at this so much already. So we know with the learning approaches, we've got the behaviourist, that's classical, operant. We've got obviously Pavlov and Skinner quoted there, which means they can ask you specifically on their research. So you should know that you could get asked specifically on Skinner or Pavlov. And then obviously we've got SLT, and again we've got another piece of research in the spec, which is Bandura. Psychodynamic and humanism, with Maslow quoted for humanism. So there isn't comparisons here, but we said this last night, and I'm going to say it again. You could very well get a question, although it's not a comparison question, you might have very similar points. You might get outline, I don't know, the behaviourist approach, discuss differences with social learning theory. I mean, it'd be a really horrible question. It wouldn't be a nice one. It's unlikely to come up. But what I'm saying is they're not going to ask a comparison question because they can't. It's not in the advanced spec. But they very well could potentially ask a difference in your discussion, in which case, you know, it can particularly be similar evaluation. So a really good thing to be looking at, and this is on our Tutor to You website, is our poster diagram of our approaches with against our issues and debates, which basically explains how each approach sits on each issue and debate, which is really nice difference that you can use in terms of evaluation for approaches. And we're going to look at evaluation for approaches towards the end today. So bear with and hold on. If you're a bit confused or you're a bit muddled on the evaluation for approaches, we're going to go through that at the end. So let's have a look at the advanced info for our biopsych. I know there have been a couple of questions, particularly on fight or flight and the endocrine system. You're right in saying, a lot of you, well done, a lot of you helping each other out tonight, which is really encouraging to see. That is not in the advanced spec. As you can see, we've got divisions of the nervous system, structure and function of neurons, synaptic transmission, localization of function, hemispheric lateralization, split brain research, plasticity, functional recovery, ways of studying the brain. And we've got 4 of those, obviously, that you can see here. So that is your advanced spec, and that is what you need to know, basically. And like I say, this is going to be covered, and it's going to come up today in the session. So any particular questions, like we said at the start, that you want to ask, try and save them for right at the end, because then we can actually see them and we can try and answer as many as we can. So for now, what I just want to show you is some command words that could come up, particularly concentrated on research methods. So I just want you to look at some of these command words and really think about what they mean to you in terms of your assessment objectives. So we know when we have a question that says refer, we know that's going to be partly AO2 or all AO2, meaning we're referring to a STEM or a scenario that they have provided or a study that they have provided in research methods. Outline and describe, explain potentially is mostly AO1 there. We know our evaluate is obviously our AO3. Don't forget, you could get asked to sketch a graph, of which we have a scatter graph, histogram, and bar chart, so you do need to know the differences between those graphs. You could get asked to justify suggestions, particularly for a particular statistical test. You know, they might give you a STEM and they might say, you know, a Mann-Whitney U was used here, justify why they used a Mann-Whitney U. And obviously we know we could get calculations, okay? So do remember you should be taking a calculator into your psychology exam, okay? Because that will really help. You may get a question where you have to calculate something, and better to use a calculator than try and do it from mental arithmetic. So I'm going to pass you over to Anne now. Anne is going to start with highlighting some research methods questions and the common errors.
Okay then, so if we look at this question that we've got on here, outline what is meant by a matched pairs experimental design. What are the key things that you need to pick out of there? What should you spot that you're being asked to do in that question? What is the question asking you to do? What is the key words there? What's the key kind of process word? Outline. Yes, Samira's picked up outline, the command word, process word. That's the thing that you're being asked to do. You're being asked to outline. Okay, and then what are you actually being asked to outline then? What is the content word or words? Yeah, I think we're getting a lag on this a little bit. So yeah, we know that it's to outline. What are you being asked to outline though? Yeah, explain what's meant by a matched pairs experimental design. Okay, so that's what you're being asked to outline. Okay, so if we click on, I think that's, yes, there we go. But it's a matched pairs experimental design. What do you think are some common errors? Before we start thinking about an answer to this question, what do we think are some of the common errors that students might make in this question? What might they do wrong? Before we think about, you all want to tell me the answers, not tell me what students might do wrong there. What kind of things might students do that aren't being asked for? Yep, Elias, they might evaluate, and you're not being asked to evaluate. You are being asked to explain how to do it, which somebody put there, or how you would use it. Yes, just that, girls. Students, when they see experimental design, they tend to want to talk about the type of experiment. Yes, they might get it muddled up with repeated measures because they're not the same. Not writing enough for 3 marks. Yes, Leah, that's absolutely true. I know it's not quite, you can't always say it, but it's like 3 marks, 3 things, I think is a good rule of thumb. Yes, they might evaluate, talk about the wrong design, confuse it with the different kinds of experiments. Don't forget to mention how the participants are matched. That's really good, because often they don't. Now, in this question, not right, this is interesting, because in this question, there isn't a requirement. Often with research methods questions, there is a requirement to write it in the context of the stimulus material. So you might get the question, in this study, explain, what is meant by a matched pairs design. There's no requirement to do that here. But I think if you're in doubt whether to contextualise something or not, I would just say contextualise it anyway, because you're not going to lose marks if you write it in context. And it doesn't ask you to. But if it's the other way round, then you certainly will. If it does say in this investigation and you don't write it in context, then there will be problems. Okay, so if we click on the next one, yes, so I think we spotted all those offers. So evaluation offered as well, wrong selection of group design, we said repeated measures, didn't we? Confused with the experiments, and maybe over reliant on examples rather than explaining how you would actually do it. Okay, so some of you are coming up with some answers here. So Freya, where participants are matched on the same characteristics or abilities to reduce participant variables, one allocated to the experimental condition and one to the control group. Yeah, that's great. So matching done by pre-testing. Got some nice answers coming here before I even asked you. So yeah, they're paired and one person is allocated to one condition and one to the other one. And I'm giving some examples of key variables. So we've got age, IQ, or gender. That once you've paired them, you randomly allocate them to the conditions. That's fantastic. Okay, so if we put up the answer then that we've got, so I think some of you had put in some extra stuff there that was really good. So it involves participants being matched with someone in the other group or the other condition in terms of relevant characteristics, for example, age or occupation. And I think yours was good about the random allocation, being randomly allocated to each condition. And each group, in a matched pairs, they are different people in each condition. But the difference is that they are matched, so they are similar to each other. And that's why it's when you come to choosing tests, that's why it's a related design. Okay, so fantastic. Okay, so if we go on to the next one. So for this one, we've got a scenario. So a psychologist had quite a few friends who enjoyed taking part in dangerous activities, such as bull running and parachute jumping. The psychologist was interested in what motivated them to take part and how they felt while they were taking part. So he decided to use unstructured interviews with 5 friends to find out more. The interviews were recorded and then analysed. So that would be a stimulus material. And you'd have a number of questions related around this, but we've got this one question here. So explain how the psychologist could have carried out a thematic analysis in this investigation using the recordings. Okay, so picking out the key things. So the command term, I think somebody's already given me the command term somewhere. Explain. Yes, we've got explain. And somebody said, read the scenario carefully. Leah, that is so true. So read the scenario, underline any key things, bits of information in there that you think you're going to be using. Using the recordings, that's important. And also that it's thematic analysis that you need to be focusing on. Yep, so if we click on, I think between you, then we've picked out all of those. Oh, and how they could have carried it out as well. Explain how, Cardi, you had that, didn't we? So that's really important because you're being asked to explain a process here. But it is only for 2 marks. So, if you're kind of thinking of your timings on these short answer questions, you are really talking about 2 marks, 2 minutes, maybe a little bit more than 2 minutes. So you're not going to be writing a really detailed explanation of how to carry out a thematic analysis. You need to get the key points. Now, again, what sorts of mistakes do you think that students might make here? You're all wanting to answer the question, but just I think what you're kind of saying there is they might write about content analysis instead of thematic analysis if they don't really know the difference. So that would be a mistake. That's a good one, Anita. Yes, actually just defining what thematic analysis is, just saying what it is rather than explaining how the psychologist would have carried it out. Yeah, they might get confused with the meta-analysis as well. Yeah, that's a good point. Lenny says, does anybody else have no clue where thematic analysis is? Well, if you haven't, then you're going to find out right now. Okay, so if we click on to the next one then. So yes, you picked out those ones that they might look at, they might sort of describe how they might use content analysis rather than thematic analysis, and they might miss the in this investigation application. Okay, so people are saying, what's the difference? So somebody tell me, what is the difference between thematic analysis and content analysis? Those of you who do know. Ebony's given a really good description there of thematic analysis. No, not quite. No, you got mixed up there, Ebony. With with thematic analysis, you don't convert it. It remains qualitative. So you're kind of halfway there, but not. You've got a bit muddled, and that's often what students happen. So thematic is this is YJ. Thematic is emerging themes, and content is predetermined categories. Yes, that's really good. Content is qualitative into quantitative, whereas thematic, it stays qualitative. They're going so quickly. No, thematic analysis is about emerging themes. The themes emerge from the data. You don't have any predetermined categories. If you talk about predetermined categories and tallying behaviour in this answer, then you're talking about content analysis. So it's just kind of getting those two things separate in your head. So content use, So thematic is... Now, they're both subjective, but to some extent, I suppose thematic is more objective, but it definitely doesn't involve counting. Okay, so we've had a go at that. So some of you have actually answered this in relation to this question. So if the researcher here was going to do a thematic analysis, then they need to read through the transcripts of the interviews. So they'd have to transcribe the recordings, put them into words, read through them, and then use some sort of coding system to identify these themes. So that's what I'm saying about emerging themes. The themes emerge related to what people are saying about why they take part in the dangerous sports. You don't start it with predetermined themes, and you're not counting up how many times people said things, because once you talk about counting, then you're talking about content analysis. Maisie, that is a lovely answer. That is a fantastic answer. You can see Maisie's answer. Transcribe, then read through, familiarise themselves to identify emergent themes. You'd say about taking part in dangerous sports, because you'd need to just get that context in. Then they would reread it and write the codes in shorthand, but you'd never change them into numbers. Brilliant. Okay, so if we go on to the next question. So a psychologist wanted to investigate the difference in mood between students who started their exams and students who finished their exams. Very topical, this one. Mood will be measured with a self-report survey with a low score indicating a low mood. The psychologist expects the group starting exams to have the lowest mood. Write a suitable hypothesis for this study. Okay, so what should students spot in this question? Well, yeah, Lauren, you're in there. The command word is you're being asked to write a hypothesis. You're not being asked to explain what one is. You're being asked to write it. Okay, what else do you need to spot? Yep, you need to make sure that you operationalise it in terms of what... Yep, if it's one tale or two tale, it doesn't say, does it? It just says write a suitable, but then it says the psychologist expects the group starting exams to have the lowest mood. So what kind of hypothesis would you write? He's got an expectation though, isn't he? So it's kind of suggesting that it would be one directional. But you're right, normally that it would say that there's some research happened already or something like that. But sometimes it might just write a suitable hypothesis and there's no clue in there to whether it should be directional or non-directional. So you can choose. But the fact that he expects that, or she expects that, suggests that it would be directional. Okay, what do you think are common errors then? You've kind of said some of these errors. Yeah, it doesn't, Anita, so I tend to agree. It'd be more likely that it would say something like previous research suggests that, if they wanted you to write a directional one. I agree. Oh, tutor to you, if you can find content analysis somewhere, that would be lovely for them. Yeah, I think you're right, Liz. I think the props would if they were going to ensure it was directional, I think it would be more obvious. Okay, so writing a null hypothesis, not operationalizing the IV and the DV, that is so common. Writing the aim instead, yes, definitely. And sometimes writing it as findings as well. That's the other thing that people who do as well. Okay, so if we just click on to the next slide. Oh, we did that one. And remember, it's this study as well, not the study you've made up. Okay, so if we look at this answer, why's that answer got a mark of 0? Actually, in that one, because it says write a suitable hypothesis, although you don't know about a null hypothesis, it's not on the spec. You could, if you wrote a null hypothesis and it was right, they would have to credit it. There's no comparison. Yeah, there's no comparison at all, is there? The group with a lower mood will be the group starting the exams. It's not operationalised, and it is so bad. I like that, because it's so bad. Trashy answer. Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. They haven't operationalised. It doesn't compare. There's only one condition of the IV. The DV isn't operationalised. It really is rubbish, isn't it? Okay, is anybody good before we put up a better answer? Is it? Oh, Ellie's just done it, I'm sure. So the mood score will be higher on the self-report survey in students that have finished their exams in comparison to those who've just started their exams. That is really nice, yes, because there's nowhere in there that tells you, like a scale or anything. Because if it gave you a scale like 1 to 10, you'd need to get that in there as well, but they haven't. Saskia, there will be a difference in mood. This is non-directional, measured on a self-report survey between students who've started exams compared with that. There's a non-directional. That is really, really good. Non-directional always seem a bit harder to word, a bit trickier to be honest. There'll be significant in the mood scores between the students. Yep, and then we've got another non-directional. Lauren. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's have a look at our example. The group of students who are starting their exams will score lower on the mood survey than the students who finished their exams. So that's a directional one. But we had some good non-directional ones there as well. So well done. So the key thing then with the hypothesis is, look if it has to be a certain direction and make sure it is. Look if it's a correlation or if it's an experiment. Make sure that you operationalize those variables, and that if it's an experimental hypothesis, that you've got both conditions of the IV and you've also got the DV. And if it's a correlation, that you've got both covariables and they're clearly operationalized. Okay, that's lovely. Becky, an aim is kind of what you plan to do rather than a prediction that can be tested. That's the difference between an aim and a prediction. Okay, so if you have a look at the next slide then. Okay, so I think we're back over to Lara now.
Okay, so I'm just quite mindful of the time. I was going to get you to do the treatment application, but actually going to ask to skip through, please, John, if that's okay, to the last slide of this one. That's great, perfect. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you, because I did say that we'd go through some evaluation for approaches. I just want to show you how easy potentially the evaluation can be. So really think about the methods that each approach uses in the advanced spec and why that might be a weakness or a strength. So if we look at psychodynamic, it's great that they use detailed studies of single cases in terms of it being quite idiographic, rich of information, but it's interpreted subjectively. It doesn't mean we can generalise it, therefore. So really want you to be thinking about these points and how you can really formulate them into a really good strength or a weakness. Same with that treatment application column there. So a great thing about the behaviourist approach is it's aided people in terms of being able to cope with their mental illnesses. We can be specific and say phobias in terms of SD or flooding, token economies in terms of people perhaps with schizophrenia and being integrated back into the community. So again, there are some quite easy evaluation points, and I think sometimes some students can be very, there's nothing wrong with being really dependent on the textbooks and the evaluation in them. But I think something going forward, especially, we're the evening before your paper 2 exam, really think about, making your life a bit easier, because a lot of these are quite easy evaluation points to remember, especially each approach generally has some sort of treatment application. That's not some sort of unique point that you need to think about just that applies to one approach. You can really think about that point for all of the approaches, and it does apply to all, as you can see there. So we do actually we're going to obviously upload this to the grade booster, and obviously it's going to stay up on YouTube. So if you did want to kind of take a screenshot of that, or you wanted to write it down as a bit of a revision post or whatever to just remind yourself of that this evening as a bit of last minute cramming, if you find that helpful, then do. But we're going to stay on the topic of approaches, because I actually just want to show you, in terms of our burger bun, what you might be able to do here with your evaluation. So if we take the psychodynamic point, so psychodynamic approach has been successfully applied to treat people with mental health problems. I'm going to give you the explain, and I'm going to get you guys to do the link. So let's have a look at the explain together. So the explain here for this particular one might be, for example, psychoanalysis involves assessing the unconscious mind through techniques such as free association or dream analysis, and therapists claim that it's very successful for treating patients suffering mild neurosis. So if we show the explain there on the board for everyone, and then what I want you guys to do is I would like you to do the link. So what would be your link to this? Why is that important? Or maybe why is that strength? So how would you end that point? How would you link it back? Absolutely. Well done, Libby. Really good. This shows how the psychodynamic approach can be, and you've disappeared because everyone's written, how the psychodynamic approach can be useful in the real world in application to treatment of mental health problems. Yeah, that's really good. Practical application, a lot of you have said that, allows people to lead a normal life. NA, well done. Yeah, real life application, Shafina. Yeah, we've got the points. So if we show the link here that we've got, so this is important because the psychodynamic approach developed this first form of psychotherapy, which really influenced the way that mental health problems were treated. So really, really good. So you kind of, once you've done your explain, what I want you to be thinking about, and this is really the essence of answering the question at the end of your peel points, your link back to the question is what we're saying, is so what? You're answering the question, so what? What does this point mean? So what? Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And what I want to know really is why. Why is that good? Or why is that bad? And like you've all spotted, and well done to all of you there, it's got great application. Yeah, because it helps people lead a relatively normal life, and helps to treat their mental health problems. So really well done for that. So tricky topic, humanistic. A lot of students tend to just struggle with this. There's quite a lot of different key specialist terms in the spec for humanistic. There's quite a lot going on. And as a result, students often struggle to link the different components together. So on the next slide, we're going to play the scrambled sentence activity, but instead of doing it with evaluation, which is what we normally do, we're going to do it with AO1. So if you haven't played this one before, I know there's quite a lot of information on the board here, but what I would like you to do, I want you to read through, and I want you to try and put these sentences and rearrange them to form a coherent outline humanistic approach. So please don't put, one number in at a time. I want you to put all 8 in the same answer chat, and then press enter once you've got them all. So what you're doing here is you're reordering it. Okay, so we've got 1 to 8, but that's in the incorrect order at the moment. So have a read through, decide what goes first, put that number first, and then what goes second, so on and so forth. And let's see who can be the first one tonight. It's quite a lot here to read. Who can be the first one tonight to get this right? So has anyone got the first one? Does anyone know what we're starting with? Just to give everyone a bit of a helping hand here. What is the first sentence out of the scrambled one that you think comes first? Isla, spot on, and Jenny, well done. So, okay. Hey, it's Ada. Oh God, we're going so fast. You said 71645. That's not quite correct. So I can tell you now. We've got, who did that one? Ryan, well done. We've got 7 and 4 as the correct first 2. So 7, 4 are the first 2. Let's go from there. So we've got 7, 4. What's going to come next? Oh, Naomi, let's have a look if you've got it right. Naomi, you've got it right up until 2. So 7, 4 and 2. Let's look at Samira. 7, 4, 2. No, we're only right up to 7, 4, 2, but we're so close. So 7, 4, 2, 1. Well done. Khadija, well done. You've got 7, 4, 2, 1. That's correct. What are the last 4 then? 7, 4, 2, 1. Then what are the last 4? 7, 4, 2, 1. Oh, Mans, you nearly right. Not quite though. 7, 4, 2, 1. Okay, hang on a minute. 7. Okay, Algero, 7, 4, 2, 1, 6, 5. You're correct for the first 5 there. Sorry, the first 6. What are the last 2? So we've got 7, 4, 2, 1, 6, 5. Who's going to get the last 2 correct? I'm just scrolling and have a look to see if anyone's got the last 2 correct. Not so far. Hang on. We have a winner. Jakey, Nico 3. Well done. You got in there first. You've got all of them correct. Let's have a look at the correct answers on the board then. Let's read through, guys. Well done, well done. So we've got one assumption of the humanistic psychology is that every individual can assert free will and have choice in how they behave. Humans are active agents who have the ability to determine their own development. Then we go on to a second, is that humans are all unique. So they reject scientific models that attempt to establish general principles of human behaviour. Instead, they believe that psychology should concern itself with the study of subjective experience, which is often referred to as taking a person-centred approach. A third one. Humanistic psychologists regard personal growth as being an essential part of what it is to be human, and that everyone has an innate tendency to achieve their full potential. We know this is called self-actualization. However, if a person has conditions of worth, again that's key in respect of or limits placed on them by parents or other people that they care for, this can prevent personal growth being achieved. An example would be a parent saying or implying that they will only love their child if they behave in a certain way. Carl Rogers was primarily interested in 2 basic human needs: the need for self-worth and the need for unconditional positive regard from other people. Both emerged from good relationships with supportive parents in childhood and later with friends and partners. An individual's self-worth has a direct impact on psychological well-being. Here we go with our last point. Still focused on the self, when there is agreement between an individual's self-concept and their notion of their ideal self, they are said to be in a state of, again a keyword, congruence. Incongruence is the opposite, and this is where there is a large gap between the two selves, and this can prevent, and we're linking it all together here, self-actualization and personal growth. You've done really well there. That was a really tough one, guys. So what we're just going to end on is a few questions, but do remember, focus on your research methods, key specialist terms, ensure you utilise and apply the correct terms. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go back to, you can see our faces, Anne and I. And if you do have any questions, we've got about 5-10 minutes left, so not very long. But if you've got any questions you guys want to ask, pop them in the chat box now. I mean, we've got over 600 students in the chat tonight, so we're not going to be able to answer everything, but we'll try our best.
I'll pick some up out here as we've been going through. So somebody just said on the humanistic one, do you need to write all this for 6 marks? No, I think you could write less than that for 6 marks. We were just trying to explain all the different bits of the theory. But if you forgot some of that, you could still get 6 marks.
Yeah.
Also,
that is about quality, remember. This came up last night with Psychodynamic as well. Do we need to include everything for 6 marks? Or even if you got a 4 marker for AO1? No. And that is a skill AQA are assessing. It's about being selective with your material. Remember, it's always better to give quality, detail, elaboration than a shopping list. So if you think, I need to include everything from Psychodynamic or everything from humanism, no. It is about elaborating and fully explaining, giving examples for a few of the concepts rather than trying to list everything as a shopping list and really briefly. So that is a skill set, being selective.
A lot of discussion about can you get 316 markers on paper 2? And well, there's only 2 sections that you can have an essay on anyway. So the most 60 markers you could have is 2. Then you could potentially have a 12-mark research methods question.
Yeah. For a designer study one, that's possible.
Yeah. Somebody said, can you get a question on psychosexual stages?
As in, is that quoted in the spec directly?
It is.
You can do. Yeah, the psychosexual stages is in the spec wording, so yes, you could get asked specifically on that, yes.
It wouldn't be an essay though, but you could get, you wouldn't just get an essay on psychosexual stages. Not a long one, I wouldn't have thought.
Marcy, you've asked about correlation coefficients, so I'll just very quickly go through that for you. So correlation coefficient is to do with obviously correlational graphs, scatter graphs. So you've got a plus or a minus. The plus means it's positive, so your line of best fit, if you like, or your plots will be going from bottom left to top right. That's positive, and negative will be the other way around. So bottom right hand corner to top left corner. And a correlation coefficient, so you've got a plus for positive, a minus for negative, and it's a number from 0 to 1. Now, the closer you are to 1 means the plots are closely interlinked. They're closer together in terms of it being really obvious it's positive or really obvious it's negative. So like 0.90 will be a really strong positive. If you had a weaker positive, like 0 plus 0.3, the plots might be further apart and it might not be so obvious that it's positive, but you can see a general direction it's going positive. You might get asked to estimate a correlation coefficient from a graph you've drawn from data or a graph that they present you, for example.
So a lot of questions around the designer study. We haven't got time to go through how to, but some tips are that within the question there will be a series of bullet points that you need to focus on. Use those bullet points as subheadings to make sure that you do everything that they ask you to do. Somebody said, can you write your answer as bullet points? Full sentences, not bullet points.
Yeah, because you've got to justify each choice. And the biggest common mistake, guys, just going on from what Anne said with design study, and we covered this last night in the exam clinic, which I think should be up somewhere if anybody wanted to watch it back, because we answered a lot of these questions then, is that use the bullet points that they give you. So when they say, we want you to design a method section, in your method section, you should include details of, they might say, variables, controls, materials, procedure. They are your 4 subheadings, meaning use them as subheadings. So variables will be your first subheading underlined. You would write the variables operationalized underneath that, so on and so forth. If you utilise that, it means you're going to stay on target for answering the question. What we find with students that don't use that as subheadings, they rear off and they talk about, I don't know, hypotheses, which they haven't asked for in the question. So we can't credit it, even if it's correct. They haven't asked for it, so we can't credit you for that. So stay on the ball, stay on the task, and stay with those bullet points that they actually give you for designer study. But designer study is all about using your initiative, and it's a hard skill. And the only way you're going to get good at that is really thinking outside the box and really practicing those and looking at previous mark schemes.
Darcy's asked, can you have a question that's just AO2 marks? And the answer is yes. Yes, application questions are often only AO2 marks unless they're incorporated into an essay question. So that's why it's really, really important to apply to the STEM in application questions. What else?
O7 or BO7, you've put discuss questions. How many points do you recommend for AO1? Discuss, just to be clear, because this comes up a lot, is generally AO1 and AO3. But the difference with discuss and evaluate, which I feel like I've said quite a lot of in these sessions, is evaluate could just be weaknesses or could just be strengths. The difference with discuss is you have to demonstrate to the examiner both sides of the argument. Now, generally speaking, if you get an 8 marker, which is discuss, generally speaking, mostly, it's 3 plus 5. I have seen some 4 plus 4s, but it tends to be 3 plus 5. I guess the message there is, regardless, always spend longer on your evaluation because it's a harder skill. It's probably going to take you longer anyway than AO1. And a big mistake is students overwrite on AO1 most of the time. So spend more time on AO3. And obviously a 16 marker is going to be split normally 6 and 10. Obviously, if you've got application, then it's 6, 4 and 6, 4 for AO2.
Right. Somebody asked about, do you need to be able to calculate a Spearman row? And the answer is no. The only test that they seem to have asked to calculate has been a sign test.
Yeah.
That's the only one. Somebody's asked about features of a scientific report. What sort of question could you get on that? I don't think we've seen many questions really. Isn't it more to do like sections of a report?
Yeah, it is to do with the sections. So you could get asked to reference a book, for example, or a journal article. They're not too bothered about the punctuation, but you need to know, that the last name comes first, then the forename, and then the date, and then the title and publisher and all of that. You need to know the order of that. They will give you all that information in the exam. You obviously need to know what the purpose of an abstract is, why we have an abstract. You need to know, obviously, how to interpret and discuss results and findings, and stats tests might come into that. You might get asked to write a method section up. But you won't get asked to write an introduction section up. And I don't think I've seen a question on writing an abstract. Have you, Anne? Is there a question on abstract? No. I can't remember. No, there isn't, is there?
I think I've seen multiple choice questions on.
Yeah. And obviously be mindful of your forms, guys. Consent, standardised instructions, debrief. You need to know how to write those if they gave you a STEM. And that tends to be anywhere between kind of 4 to 6 marks for writing the forms, generally speaking, going by previous questions. So... we'll get into about 20 minutes.
Could you get 8 marks on writing up a scientific report? No, I can't see how you could, because there's no evaluation.
No, the minimum marks has been about 10, I think, for like the design of study writing report, about 10 to 12.
She was talking about features of a scientific report.
Oh, sorry, features, right, okay. No. So many questions. I know you guys have got loads more questions, but I encourage you to go and have a look at the exam clinic that we did yesterday. John, do you know whether they can access that? Is that on?
Yeah, it is. It's available on the Tutor 2 website if you look on replays for psychology, yeah.
Great, yeah. And do look at that, guys, because I can see a lot of questions that we're asking here. We answered them last night. So if you're still really unsure, and Laura went through Sperry's research, for example. That's worth watching by itself. Go back and look at the exam clinic that's on Tutor 2. But we are going to have to end it there. We wish you the best of luck. We really do. Slow down, read the question, take your time, really understand the command words, and keep an eye on your time. 4 marks, roughly 5 minutes, etc. And really think about putting yourself in the shoes of the experimenter or the participant, especially for the designer study questions. Really put yourself in those shoes so you can really kind of go through the process of like the procedure and writing it out correctly and effectively.
Just checking as well, Laura, we've got one of these for paper 3 as well, haven't we?
Yes, sorry.
We've got exam clinics.
Yes, so the exam clinics, I'm actually doing both now.
Okay.
So we've got one on Monday next week at 6 p.m. for paper 3, and then another one on Tuesday at 6 p.m. paper 3. So we won't be doing this type of session next week for paper 3, just because there are so many options. So we're just going to be doing exam clinics, which, if you don't know what that is, that's just Q&A. So if you want to come and you just want to ask questions and we answer them, Monday and Tuesday 6 p.m. is when we're going to be doing them. Okay.
Brilliant stuff. Listen, first of all, massive thank you to everybody who took part in the chat tonight in terms of giving us answers, and of course a huge thank you to both Lara and Anne for both putting this together and going through the presentation and the questions tonight. Lara's already said it, but of course on behalf of Tutor to You and all of your teachers, we wish you the very best of luck in tomorrow's exam, and we'll hopefully see you again very soon for the paper 3 exam clinics. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Good luck.